So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is an actual discussion, an actual dialogue with a very smart student here. And you were asking, let's do it again. What were you asking? Why is Islam the way it is?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the ideas that it carries, or are we talking about in terms of morality?
I would think of more of the idea.
Okay, the idea. So when we're talking about the idea, philosophers actually study that in something called epistemology. So what does that mean? Whenever we talk about any idea, we first have to ask ourselves what makes whatever idea allowed, an idea, an authentic idea, an idea that holds any value. So in Islam, it actually considered that there are three main ideas that circulate around us. Now, of course, when we're talking about the different ideas, we're talking about so many different philosophies out there. From the philosophies out there, for example, the philosophy of considering that what makes something ethical is basically the result of it, or what makes something ethical is basically the value itself, like Socrates considered, or what makes an idea ethical is basically what the group, the masses consider, what the universe and how people consider it, etc. I don't want to go into all those details, but those are just some of those philosophical arguments. So in Islam, it actually considered that there are three main traces. Let's say the first trace is really just our own speculation. So people thinking, I think it's right, and it could be, the speculation could be based on the consequence of the matter, or somebody else might say, well, kind of like, the different ideas and the different philosophies regarding ethics, or somebody else might say, well, if it's containing value, then therefore it should be justice. Somebody else might, or other philosophers will say, no, it's not that. It's basically how the group and the masses actually see it. In other words, it's basically based on universalism. It's based on the universe. If we take it as a universal thing, if it leads to harm in all over the world, then the piece of it in its small piece should also be bad. Why is lying bad? Well, because if every single one was to lie, then we're going to feel that we're not secure. The other ones will consider, well, it's actually not the masses, but it's actually the category. How do we actually find it? Now, those are all speculations, but the other ones would actually regard, well, it's really our own feelings. It's our own feelings, how we feel about right or wrong, and how we feel about ethics. Is it feelings? If you feel that it's harming you, therefore it should be harmful. If you feel that it's not harming you, you're feeling pleasure, then therefore it should be okay. So that's another philosophy. In Islam, it actually regarded both erroneous. Why are both erroneous? Well, because feelings can be delusional. Our understanding of pain, we might think of it as it's just harm, but pain is one way that actually helps us take and make decisions. And at many times, pain is actually good depending on the perspective and the person looking at pain. What could be pain to you could be a positive thing to me. You lost money when you bought the pen, but when I gave you the pen and you gave me money, the value of you losing was to me a positive thing. It was a gain. Now, that's the same thing in where in Islam it considered that it's not speculation. It's not about how many people, what the idea is, or the lobbying, or how one government might, one group, one, etc. And it's not the economy that regards or that determines whether something is moral or not. In Islam, it actually considered that it's actually Allah Almighty that actually had sent the definition of morality. And that if man was going to go into speculations, their speculation might not always contain the information that preceded their existence. What does that even have to do with anything? So in Islam, it regarded that man lacks data, the data regarding his existence and even his purpose of existence. What does that have to do with anything? Well, whenever you make something, you produce something, you produced it for a particular reason. Then therefore the manufacturer would usually be the person to say, well, we created, or at least, manufactured this item in order to do a certain purpose. Now, what does that mean? That the producer, when they actually designed the item, they designed it in order to get to a certain goal. Therefore, it is not going to be strong enough or qualified enough to actually do other purposes. It's not going to meet the goal because it wasn't designed for that. It doesn't hold the quality, it doesn't hold the power, it doesn't hold the different things needed to do another purpose. A car drives on ground, it wasn't designed to fly. Now, so in Islam, it regarded that Allah Almighty created the purpose before mankind, all right, created the purpose before even the creation. And therefore, the purpose is actually to be found and not to be created. Because in Islam, the second that you create a purpose, which is called today existentialism, the second that you create a purpose, that would actually mean you had created something fake. When you create something that is not factual, that is, all right, is truth to be created or is truth to be found? If you say truth is to be created, manufactured, that means that what you create is really based on your understanding of what you know of that piece. But if you already lack data, then certainly you lack data about your body function. You lack data, and human beings are so complex. The world is so complex. You can study medicine, but it's extremely hard to study medicine, sociology, genealogy, and all these different things. You can study parts of it, but you can't study everything. And of course, the law and all these different things. So that's why man lacks data on how to make stability within the creation, because it holds more than just the human beings. So when we look at truth, it is not to be created, but it is actually to be found. Why does truth matter? Why does truth matter? Why can't we just live without truth and just create our own truth? Well, here's the thing, is that this whole world was actually created based on a certain pattern. There's this pattern in the world that actually reflects that there is a structure. Now, the structure, this was actually spelled wrong. The structure is actually telling us that there's something farther than just life for mere play, that there's actually a purpose. Just like everything in the creation was created within a structure, then therefore there has to be a structure to even our actions. You see it? Are you lost?
A little, yeah.
A little. Let's do it again.
Okay.
Let's do it again. Now, when we look at foundations of how do we regard something right or wrong, why, who considers something is ethical or not ethical? So I mentioned these different philosophies. I didn't mention the names, okay, because I didn't want to take you into jargon.
Yeah.
I just told you what they're saying in simple terms, okay? And then I mentioned those different thoughts, theories, and then I mentioned part of the theories is basically how we feel. But I just skimmed over them really quick and I said, why the divine, as divine meaning God Almighty, to mean ruh? Why do we as Muslims, because why is Islam the way it is the question. Why do Muslims actually feel that there has to be a structure? All right. Why does there have to be a structure? That's why I actually mentioned, oh, sorry, we need to go to the second slide. So that's why I was actually mentioning, well, there's speculation, there are the feelings. So in Islam, it's actually the way it is because it considers that man lacks data about the purpose of life and existence, and they can have no access to that information using mind or even feelings. Are you with me now? All right. Since man does not have access to knowing the purpose, why doesn't he have access to knowing the purpose? Because when our mind thinks, we don't think, and we're not able to think, let's say it that way, beyond materialistic things that are around us. What are the elements that we use to understand science and to understand the world around us? We use our eyes, we use our nose, the five senses, all right? The process that it happens in is basically our mind. But even our mind is one of the tools, but even that tool is actually limited in its understanding. The purpose of life, it preceded life itself. What does precede? Meaning it was there before the beginning of life. How does, let's say it that way. What comes first? The making of your eye? Or do you say, well, did your eye, your body construct itself and say, why don't we just use it for sight? You see it?
Your eyes were made first and then it decided to see.
And then it decided the sight? You think so? So let's do it this way. If that was the case, if your eyes were made first and then it decided the sight, so why did it put it in that structure? The structure was made in order to see. The structure was made, the whole structure of it was made to conduct a certain purpose. Your hearing was made in order to perform a certain purpose, which is to be able to hear. All right? Now, when we look at hearing, seeing, that's a purpose. That's a purpose. The medium, the process and the medium and all that is actually what made that purpose manufactured to be put on ground. Are you with me? So the idea of seeing, that determined what is needed in order to be able to make it the idea, purpose of seeing something factual on ground. You see it? Now, same thing, it's not just your sight, it's not just your hearing, it's actually everything in life. Purpose came before life and everything in life. You see what I'm saying now? If you're lost, do tell me. All right. So now that since we look at this world, there's a structure, then this structure is actually telling us that there is a purpose in and for this structure. Now, our behavior is part of the structure. Your question was, why is Islam the way it is? All right. Now, our actions are part of the structure, and which is why Islam regarded that, hey, when you actually look at human action, some of the human action is actually under free will, and some of it is not under free will. It's not voluntary. Can you choose not to sleep for a couple of hours? But how long will you be able to do it?
It won't, like, you're gonna like.
It won't let you.
Yeah.
Can you choose not to go to the bathroom for some time, but then it will force itself out? Can you choose not to let your heart pump? You can't. Unless you decided to commit suicide, that's a different story. Unless, a different thing, that's a different story. But those things are actually not under your free will, and that's why you're not held accountable generally for them, unless you coerce something else. Now, the free will in terms of actions are not any different and are not outside of the structure that God Almighty created in this world. So why is Islam the way it is? What structure is it really talking about? So in Islam, it regarded that the most important structure to build within not only ourselves, but even on a universal level. That structure is in order to protect, first, it's your understanding of the world, and it's called the deen. It's basically the vision you see the world. Are you really seeing things based on truth? Or are you creating a delusion? That's the first part. The second part is really people's lives. To hold the individual life and human life in general as sacred is actually considered the second legal maxim in Islam. Third, considering mind. Mind and the preservation of mind is actually considered as the third structure of Islam and the foundation of the justice and social justice, or even justice on ground in every single direction. Number 4, family and / chastity is also considered number 4. Family in the structure. Why in Islam is sexual relations outside of marriage forbidden? Because it regarded that the child has the right to be living within mother and father. Why is that even an issue? Because it's a sacred thing that God Almighty had considered in terms of rights. There's a certain structure that was created in this world. Why does Islam regard that drinking is actually wrong? It regarded drinking or taking drugs as wrong because it stopped or it somehow put a default or somehow affected the ability to think. Why is killing in Islam not allowed? Because God Almighty had given people life. To stop it or to somehow terminate it is actually against God Almighty and the way He created the world. Why is, like I said, sexual relations outside of marriage, because God Almighty created people, and part of that creation is that there would be a father and a mother to protect them within that frame. That's the unity. That's the unit, the smallest unit in a family in the whole world. So what's the other thing? Finally, when we're talking about finance and when we're talking about wealth, in Islam, it regarded that property, the way that it is made, income, the way that it is distributed, or the way that it is spent, is also put within a certain structure in order to instill justice. Are you with me here? In order to instill justice, well, not only is it in just one side, and that's why when we say, well, why is Islam the way it is? Well, the main reason why Islam is really the way it is number one, because Islam regarded that this world was created in structure. Human beings are the only ones that have free will, but their free will is really because they are held accountable. Because they're held accountable. Why are they held accountable? Well, because they're actually being tested. And that's why Islam tells you the reason why Islam the way it is, it takes you back all the way to the story of Prophet Adam and tells you, speaking of Prophet Adam, the story began during Prophet Adam when Allah Almighty created Adam and then showed, listen to this, showed the angels this creature, this new creature called Adam, human. And they said, they're looking at him, are you going to create something that's going to bring more destruction on earth? And then he wanted to show them that this creature is not like any other creature. And that's why the ayah says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And he taught Adam the names of things. It wasn't the name of the item per se. It is more to prove to the angels that this new creature has two things here. Number one, the ability to do or not do, free will, and the ability to use intellect. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, intellect, which is why in Islam, when is a person not held accountable?
Before we start, when we're talking about when Allah created Adam and that peace be upon now, and like the angel were asking, why did you create this creature? And was it because before human there was jinn, and then because I've heard stories of before the human were created there was jinns on earth, and then they created destruction.
Well, is it really the jinn that were before Adam? Because if you look at the ayah, the ayah actually says that the angels asked, are you going to create a creation that's going to cause bloodshed? Jinn don't have blood. What nation was that? What group of people were those? Allahu Alam. Although most of the scholars actually said it was the jinn, but jinn don't have blood. They're actually created from marij min nar. They don't have blood. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So was it another creation that didn't have intellect, that was somehow lacking what Adam has? Was there later marriage that happened between the children of Adam and these creations that were not at a certain level? Allahu Alam. Allahu Alam. In the end, is that they were aware of another creation. There was another creation before us, before the human creation, us. All right. Now, in the end, is that Allah Almighty introduced to them that this creature, Adam, has intellect and has free will. Angels don't have free will. They just do as they're ordered to do. They also don't have intellect. And that's why they just said, well, لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. He said, we just know what you taught us. The ability to do that comprehension, to do that type of cognitive skill, that's not what Malaika have. That's what you and I have. That's intellect. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually introduced Adam to them. Adam, show them. Demonstrate the skill. But then the free will is demonstrated and seen not for the Malaika only, but even for Adam, because when he ate from the tree, he didn't at that moment consider and review that free will part of his. He ate from the tree. He knew it was forbidden. He knew he wasn't supposed to. But that's why Allah Almighty then says, well, now that you have committed something I asked you not to do, now you know very well that there is a battle that is going to be forever between truth and falsehood, between the free will, the ability to do right, and all the different elements that might actually push you towards a different direction. The elements can be nafs, can be shaitan, and of course, those two elements are actually enough to get us into a different direction. So that's why Allah Almighty in the Quran actually made it clear to, okay, so why did we actually see in Islam, for example, it talked about the obligation to do a certain thing, to protect people's lives, or even to kill at other times, to prosecute at other times. Why can't we just say all killing is wrong, period? Why can't we do that? Why did we say that family is only between husband and wife and cannot be otherwise? Because in Islam, it regarded that all the different theories from the very beginning, not only in making the idea of ethics, but even putting a limit to ethics. Where does it begin and where does it end is actually part of this whole theology, this whole idea, this whole philosophy. So it's not just saying, I believe in mind, but your mind is limited. So just like it didn't have the power to bring about the idea that killing is wrong. Why? Because even atheists would say that mind and human body is nothing but matter in nature. In motion, sorry. It's just matter in motion. If it's just matter in motion, then what makes our mind or our brain, if it's just matter, being able to understand the reality that we have in the world around us? So just like it lacked data in making a law, it lacks data to complete the details in how we apply and where and when we apply or not apply the law. You understand what I'm saying? Now, same thing in where feelings, just like when we said that feelings can actually give us a delusion in where you could feel, hey, sugar is making me feel good. Let me eat more sugar. Your mind is basically wanting you to feed more. You take more sugar, you're not realizing the impact that it has on your body. Your diabetes, your sugar level, all these different things. Now, what you didn't realize is that your body, your brain manipulated your feelings on what it really needs. Therefore, feelings are not a source or a valid source to actually consider or determine ethics. Same thing when we're talking about economy. Economy actually engages on a lot of selfishness and engages in a lot of big money and big things that are just getting their selfishness in the way. If we're going to consider people's integrity, well, we would not have seen all the different injustices that are in the world, right? So therefore, what we know of human beings is that they have their injustices, they have their selfishness, feelings, lobbying can also manipulate the masses into considering something ethical or not. So Islam tells you, well, wait a minute, since you lack data regarding your existence and why you were even created, then the Lord Almighty is the one that has the right. Since He created you, He has the right, and He is the one that sent you the information regarding what makes something as ethical, moral, or what makes something immoral. Because He created the structure in this whole world. If He created the structure in this whole world, you cannot exit out of the structure. Therefore, you are within the structure. Therefore, morality is really supposed to be based on how much you follow the structure created within this world. The farther you are away from the structure, it is determined as the farther you are away from God. The closer you are to the structure, the more you follow the structure created in this world, the closer you are to God, because then you're following the system that God created in this world. So what is the structure anyways? Why is it important? Because remember, the structure was created. Therefore, truth about the structure is to actually be discovered, not created. Just as you don't create a structure on how gravity does and works, you discover it. To actually invent an idea in science or anything, we always look at, well, how many times does this theory really work? Is this what experiment is telling us? Why were they even experimenting? Why are they even trying with experiment? If the structure was changing all the time, then there would be a valid point to there doesn't need to be a truth or any truth because there's no structure. But because there's a structure in the world, that's why we do experiment and empirical studies in order to study the structure. Because the second that you go out against the structure, you know that you're creating a delusion. If you decide that I'm going to take my car and I'm going to fly, and you decided to fly, what's going to happen? The car is not going to fly. What are you going to end up with? You're going to end up in a crash because your car is not going to fly. You hit against the structure. What does that even mean? You hit against reality. The second you go against reality, you're basically going to be losing your life. You're going to be losing your own self because you went against the structure. You insisted that you wanted to go against the structure. You insisted that you wanted to do the way that you wanted to do it. But reality doesn't follow what you want. Reality, you have to adapt to what reality is because that's the way God created the structure. Now, what is the structure? So now going back to the part, that's why in Islam it told you the structure starts with one understanding what makes, here I put deen, it's actually deen, what makes your vision? How do you view the world? What makes truth? What designs truth? What is the truth anyways? That's why God Almighty took you all the way back to the point about deen, and made it sent with the prophets and the messengers, not only about God, but about yourself as well. What do I want? Where am I going? What am I trying to seek? Where is my life heading to? What is after death? Why was life even there from the very beginning of it? Why is there life and why is there death? Why is there more and more and more life? Then what? Where did everybody go? What happened? Where did the beginning start from? Who started it? And why is it going? And where is it going? That's basically what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent with the prophets and messengers, not to only tell them about the purpose of life, but to tell them how to follow the structure that God created in this life. So it started, well, now you understand the structure of life. You understand the foundation of what makes something true. Then Allah Almighty then takes us to say, well, now that you understand where structure begins, let's then talk about what makes something as justice and what makes it moral and what makes it immoral. Because the second that you get out of the basis, then you go into a delusion. Start with number one, protecting people's lives. Two, protecting your mind to help you understand. That's why it forbid smoking, alcohol, drugs, or even whenever the person's mind is off, that's when Islam does not hold them accountable. So if somebody is considered as mentally ill to mean that they're not able to use cognitive skills, like for example, when we're talking about different mental illnesses, if they're not able to process ideas, they're not able to, you tell them, put the pen on the paper, they don't understand it. You tell them killing is not good, it's harmful, this is the consequence. Then, if they don't understand it, they don't know how to apply it, then these people are not held accountable. Why? Because just as God Almighty held you accountable through intellect and free will, the second your intellect is at default, that's when you're not held accountable. The second your free will is not there, you're not held accountable. If I hold a gun and say Islam is false, and you know very well that I'm going to pull the trigger and shoot you, then you're not held accountable if you said it. Why? Because I took out your free will at that moment. You were coerced. It was compulsion. You see it? Mm-hmm. Now, when these two things are not there, any of them is not there, you're not held accountable. All right? Now, but when we're talking about mind, it doesn't just involve you consuming, it also involves you giving the consumption to others. That's why in Islam, selling drugs is illegal in Islam. But in countries like the US, for example, pot is illegal, even though it's an herb that people chew, doesn't really have that much of an effect. It's more of like a tobacco. But liquor is legal, even though liquor is even more harmful. Look at how many accidents. Look at how much violence, etc., just through alcohol. But alcohol was made legal. Pot was made illegal, even though pot is not on the scale of intoxication. It's not even close. Why was that made legal and that not made legal? Because it's not based on the harm. In fact, believe it or not, a lot of the liquor stores, you know who they're owned by?
Mm. The color?
The government.
Oh.
This is real. A lot of the liquor stores are actually owned by the government. A lot of them. You know why? Because it creates revenue. It creates money, generates money. So why didn't you make it illegal? What are you doing? If you're actually here buying a liquor store in order to fund making streets and making etc., well, you can reduce the number of cops working on street by simply closing, and that way you won't have to pay for the cops. You'll have less violence, you'll have less rape, you'll have less car damage, and you definitely have more people that are using their intellect. You'll have less problems, social issues, and all these different things. So Islam tells you, well, wait a minute, the way it is that what on an individual level, just like when we say massive war and genocides is not acceptable, and same thing on a personal level. That's why in Islam it said, you kill one person as it is as if you had killed all mankind. Same thing. You sell drugs, you sell alcohol, is the same as consuming it. Same thing. Let's go down. You commit zina, you go outside sexual relations outside of marriage, it's the same as actually doing any relation outside of marriage, whether that's homosexuality, whatever it is, it's considered you had then went against the structure that God Almighty created in this world. So Islam will tell you, wait a minute, there's a structure for the family. Family is sacred. The child's rights are sacred. Therefore, don't transgress that limit. Don't go against the structure. Then, for the wealth, it said there's a certain way to generate income. The income must fall within justice, consent, but at the same time, it's not enough to give consent. It's actually supposed to be based on God Almighty's limits. So wait a minute. Why is interest wrong? Why is interest wrong?
Because it kind of like accumulates debt, I think.
Accumulates debt? Well, here's the thing. Historically speaking, interest, even in the pre-prophetic era, interest was actually what generated slavery. You know how? So interest, if you couldn't pay your debt, you had no choice. You needed property. You needed money to give me that money back. So I will actually tell you, give me one of your kids. I'll take that as a property. Interest generated slavery, and Islam was about freeing people, not enslaving people, whether on ground, whether actual slavery or subliminal slavery. So what do we mean by subliminal slavery? Kind of like banks. When you look at banks, what do banks do? Well, for banks, it's all about, hey, you pay me money, I get you money, and I'm going to charge you this much for the money, and the number starts multiplying. Then your home, and maybe your car, and who knows what, and you end up really working to pay them. Even though technically you might see yourself, I'm free to do what I want, but in reality, all your effort is now going for them. So Islam wanted you to be free. So why did it actually consider some type of commerce, some type of wealth gain, income, etc., is not permissible? Because of the fact that it might harm your free will, or even different things might actually harm your intellect. What about family? It's because it's the foundation of life. It's sacred. Did I answer it?
Mhm,
Are you sure?
mhm.
I hope you're not falling asleep.
No, I'm not.
All right, so this is just, Walaikum Assalam. Oh, we actually have other people following us. All right, yep. So, any questions?
No, not at all.
Are you sure?
Uh-huh.
That answered all the questions?
No, I was just like in the beginning when you wanted to like talk about the basic, like I think it was like two things you wanted to talk about. Like I think it was like sorry, I was just wondering, is there like a philosophy like behind it?
Philosophy behind what?
Like, because you know how I was like, because like in my mind when I was thinking about like the root, I was thinking that it came like from a seed. Like because for me, because like when I was thinking about more of the root of Islam, I was thinking that like it was planted. If that makes
It was planted, what, Islam was planted?
not in that way, but like because like in my mind I thought that it came like it came from some like it came from an egg, and because in my mind I was thinking more of was like maybe like did it come from like an idea and then the idea grew.
No, absolutely not. It's not an idea, it's not man-made. Islam is a revelation from Allah Almighty. Islam is not an idea that started out with the Prophet ﷺ and then let's add on to the idea. No, the basis of Islam, Quran, was actually revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and from there, the Prophet ﷺ was also taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to demonstrate and to even clarify what the Quran is actually saying. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we had sent you sent you along with things, mithlahu ma'a. It's like along with things to clarify what was revealed unto you, which is Quran. So Allah Almighty sent the prophets and the messengers in order to clarify to man why they were created. That's not any information that we could easily generate out of thought, an idea. That's an information that is beyond physics. That's an information that's beyond physics. Our mind can only understand what we can feel, what we can see, what we can hear, and even the tools that might not be necessarily, connected to our body, but even the tools that we had invented were also designed to do that, but in a more sophisticated way. The X-ray, the mammogram, the MRI, whatever it is, all those were designed to study whether the biology, the physics, and it's basically the structure. The information about life, preceded life, that is what we call the metaphysics. It's beyond the materialistic things that you and I can examine. You understand what I mean? It's beyond what you and I can examine. It's beyond, what do we mean by you and I? Intellect and science. No matter how smart you are, you cannot get to the information that is beyond your capacity as a human being to study. Are you going to be able to one day see malaika under a microscope? No. Are you going to be able to see God under a microscope? No. Why? Because he's beyond the physics that your mind was designed to study. Your mind was designed to study certain matter. It cannot go beyond that. But in Islam, it tells you there's actually more to life than the materialistic things that you see around you, no matter how smart and how intellectual you are. So that's why God Almighty had actually sent al-Wahy in order to help you understand what is beyond life, whether that included the purpose of life or what is afterlife. Are we going to be able to any time or any day through science, discover or even figure out anything about Jannah? No. Why not? Well, that's because all that is outside of the materialistic world. So how are we going to stand on Judgment Day? How is the sun going to get close to us? How is death not even possible? Well, the whole physics of what you know about this life, it's totally different than the physics in the afterlife. So what happens to the dead person? Where are they going? All you could see is that they're just decomposing. But you lack data. You only see what that they're decomposing. Is that all the data about human nature? Is that they're just decomposing, that's the end of it? Islam tells you no. You lack data. You only saw the materialistic side of that body decomposing, but there's actually more to life than a body decomposing. This person, according to Islam, actually contained ruh, what you will never be able to get to in order to experiment. You see what I'm saying? You'll never be able to experiment ruh because it is part of ghaib, metaphysics. It's outside of what you're able to study in nature. It's outside of that. So therefore, Islam is telling you life is not only what you see and what you hear. There's a structure that preceded your existence. Preceded means it came before even your existence. You understand what I mean? Preceded means it came before. Preceded means it is outside of what you can sense. So Islam tells you, well, just as your understanding of the world lacks the data to know everything about the world, God Almighty sent the prophets and the messengers in order to tell you the details of what you need to do, why you were created, and where you're heading. So the Quran and Sunnah were sent. What about the previous prophets? The previous prophets were sent other messages, but the same message was really one. The general structure of the message in terms of one, in terms of worshiping one God Almighty, and that we're created to be tested, and three, we have to submit to God Almighty by preserving these items, is all the prophets and the messengers, the message that was sent on to them. They all came with the same message. So what is this issue of fiqh and scholars interpreted different things and etc.? That's really just trying to understand the Quran and what it says, because we believe that this is the foundation of understanding life. And the Prophet was there to explain it. So for Muslims, why is Islam the way it is? Well, really, it's because we believe that speculation, intellect lacks data. Our pleasure in our body cannot, both of these items are not enough items to understand the world. So we go back to the Quran in order to help us understand the limits, ethics, justice in every single corner of life. What do you know about it? How do you implement it? Some of the details that other prophets had come with in terms of legislature might have been different because of different circumstances. But in Islam, it told you, well, today, perfected your religion. You can use this, and from here, start from here, and continue based on this, understanding and trying to derive the structure of new things and how it has to go back to the legal maxim. For example, here in the US, the American Constitution really just has a couple things. But just from these, the founding fathers and all the different elements and the different things that they actually put in the Constitution, they wrote hundreds of volumes to interpret the Constitution. Well, Islam, this interpretation for the Constitution, all right, is basically called fiqh, legislature, jurisprudence. Islam gave it to you in the Quran and the prophetic actions. So why is Islam the way it is? Well, because of the belief that we have that Allah Almighty did not send a man with no guidance, and because God Almighty had actually sent with man the prophets and the messengers the information regarding what is outside of their ability to use their mind to understand. Did I answer? You got any questions?
No.
Are you sure? I hope I didn't get you tired and you were like, oh.
No.
Are you sure? All right. So this is it, inshallah. Well, for those that are actually online, we will continue, inshallah, some other times. Whenever I would get a question, I would just go and put it on YouTube. So, Assalamu alaikum, Hadi, and everyone else.